What I want to do this morning is talk about a very simple teaching of Jesus as it relates to your schedule, to your calendar, and how you spend your time, and what you give your attention to. So we're going to be in Luke 10:38 through 42. If you have your Bible, I'd like to follow along. And we're going to read this very simple story here where Jesus commends someone who is intentional. They're intentional in giving their time and attention to him and being in his presence. So Luke chapter 10, and here's the scene. Jesus and his disciples are in a town called Bethany, just a few miles outside of Jerusalem, and they decide that they're going to stop by and visit Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha. So we don't know the birth order of these three. Kind of by the text, you can tell Martha is probably the oldest one. She has some of that first-born energy, then Mary, and then comes the younger brother, Lazarus. And I think their parents, could have not agreed on a name, an M name for the boy, so it was Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And they stopped by. Their house was right outside Jerusalem. And here's how it begins in verse 38. Jesus and his disciples were on their way, and he came to a village where he knew a woman named Martha, and she opened her home for him. So the question is, how did Martha know that Jesus was coming? And I would argue that she probably did not know Jesus was coming. So Jesus shows up with his 12 disciples, and likely more than just the 12, probably upwards of 20. And Martha knows suddenly that there's some things that need to be done. A lot of things need to happen here. And they need to get done quickly. And how would you feel if you just found out that Jesus and his disciples and his entourage was coming by your house right after church? You would feel overwhelmed. You'd suddenly be aware of some things that need to happen, what preparations need to be made, and a lot of responsibilities. So Martha was kind of feeling that. In verse 39, we see that she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. So Jesus comes by with his disciples and he's teaching, and Mary comes in and sits down at his feet, and she's paying full attention to Jesus. And Martha, she's in the kitchen working, giving her attention to preparations and responsibilities. And Mary is sitting in the presence of Jesus. Now don't miss the significance of this in Luke's gospel. To say that a woman was sitting at the foot of a rabbi would have been culturally unheard of. Jesus, as a rabbi, allowed her to sit at his feet. He's accepting, even inviting her to be one of his students, one of his ambassadors, somebody that's going to carry on his ministry, his mission, and his message. But it would have been uncomfortable for the people in the room. Likely for the 12 disciples, seeing Mary at the feet of Jesus as a rabbi, it's not part of their tradition. That wasn't part of their religious practice. They probably would have been a little bit uncomfortable. But Jesus welcomed her. He does not say to Mary, "Mary, what are you doing here?" He doesn't say to Mary, "Hey, give us a call when the food's ready." And that's not the conversation that takes place. He seems to welcome her. And he wanted her there. So Mary sits at the feet of Jesus, listening to his words, rather than assuming a role that was expected in the woman in that culture. She takes the place at the feet of Jesus. She assumes the posture of a student, learning at the feet of the rabbi named Jesus, a role that's traditionally reserved for men. Verse 40 says, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that needed to happen and everything that needed to take place. So Martha is giving her full attention to all the stuff and things that need to be done so that Jesus and his disciples feel welcomed, so that she can be hospitable to them. And the question is, why is she doing this? Is she doing this as for some type of act of worship, or is she doing it out of concern of what people might think? And I think for a lot of us, we get caught up in this Martha spirit, where we're driven by the fear of what people think, what drives us. That's what gets us out of bed and keeps us going. We want to appear to have everything in order. We don't want to drop any of our responsibilities. We're afraid of what people might think. And I think this is how we live our lives, through this filter, through which we see every connection and every relationship. And this awareness, this fear of what other people might think, what they might see, what they might say when we're not around. And oftentimes that ends up driving some good things, but we're not doing them for good reasons. We are doing them out of fear of what people might say or think about us. Now I think that's part of Martha's concern. If I don't do this, what are people going to say about me? What kind of host would I have been? And so she is prioritizing preparations and productions. And Mary is different. She is prioritizing connections and being present with Jesus. And it's easy, I think, when we read the story now, to be critical of Martha. But I want you to think through this. She's not doing something that's bad. In fact, what she is doing is good. She is serving. She's being hospitable. It's not that Jesus is in the family room teaching and she's in the kitchen talking with an old friend. That's not the scene here. It's not that Jesus is teaching and she's in her bedroom with the door shut, and that's not what's happening. It's not that she chose something bad or neutral. I mean, what she's doing is good, but it's not what's best. And there's something better that needs to have her attention. And so the word the Bible uses here to describe what she's doing is distracted. She is distracted. Sometimes good things, when they're chosen over better things, can be a distraction. And so Martha is distracted by all these things. They're in their right place, good and worthwhile. They are spiritual gifts, but she's missing out on the presence of Jesus, which should mean more than anything else. And I think we can have this Martha spirit about us, where we miss the point. We miss the point of some things that we're called to do as believers, some of the significant connections that we're meant to have, because we're too busy focused on our to-do list. We're focused on our checklist. And one of the ways you may know you have a Martha spirit is not just that you do these things, but you resent people who don't. You resent them for not doing what you're doing. And so there's some of this that starts to play out here as we read along in this story. Martha's annoyed with her sister, and she even seems a little bit annoyed with Jesus. So the verse 40, she came to Jesus and she asked, Lord, don't you care? Don't you care that my sister has let me do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Lord, don't you care? Do you see everything that I'm doing? Don't you see the way I'm being responsible? Can you just tell my sister that she needs to do what I'm doing? And she's assuming that Jesus is on her side. But be really careful with such an assumption. When there's some kind of conflict and you just assume that Jesus is on your side, be real careful, because Jesus is on Jesus' side. Verse 41 and 42 go on, and here's how Jesus responds. Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. Only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. You know, and I think Jesus was gentle here and tender. Maybe had a little smile on his face. Hey, you're worried and upset about all kinds of things. But your sister has chosen the one thing that is most important, and it's not going to be taken away from her. There are three adjectives here in the text that describe Martha. She's distracted, she's worried, and she's upset. So she's distracted, she's worried, and she's upset. The word upset here is translated as easily annoyed or easily bothered. So I want you just to look at your life and ask, perhaps, if these three words describe you. I think these are three words that maybe we wouldn't use to describe ourselves, but maybe a lot of people who do life with us would use them to describe us. I think that we live in a world that's distracted, in an age of distraction. People are anxious and easily annoyed, and I think that we can all agree on that. If you take all the information from the beginning of time until 2003 and put that all together, we produce more content in 2 days now than we did during all that time combined. And yet, with all this information and all the answers available to us, we seem to be more anxious than ever. Meaning that we seem to have access to the answer, but it doesn't seem to answer our question. We have struggles and challenges, and we experience things that are so hard to understand now, and it divides us. We're more connected by technology and social media. They link us together, whether it's our neighbors or worldwide. Yet, we are strangely disconnected. It has left us very divided. And we are more upset by one another, easily annoyed, and frustrated than ever before. So Jesus says to Martha, one thing is needed. And I just love the simplicity of his answer here. There's one thing that really is necessary here. Like, what you're doing is good, but it's not the one thing that's better. And that is spending time with me. It's practicing the presence of Jesus in our lives. That is always better. And Jesus says it very simply here. And part of me is like, well, don't you want to say more about it, Jesus? And he doesn't. He just said, there's one thing that is most important. So when you plan your day and put together your calendar, you think through your schedules, you decide who's going to get your attention and what isn't. And this is the one thing that is best, spending time with me, spending time with Jesus. And so from this text, there's just a couple of very practical ways that we can apply it and build our house on a firm foundation. First, we can eliminate distractions. We just eliminate them. Don't just be aware of them, but eliminate them. And simplicity requires cutting out and eliminating unnecessary and even secondary distractions. Meaning it's just not about repenting of sin and eliminating things that are wrong or evil. It's about recognizing that some of these things aren't necessarily wrong or evil, but yet they are very distracting. Unless we do something about it, it makes it very difficult to give our attention to Jesus, to sit at his feet. And there are a lot of different distractions in our world that we could talk to together. And I think they all come a distant second to our screens, right? I could give you a lot of statistics on this, but your device tells the story. And every Sunday we get the screen time notification. And if you're like me, you swipe back up as fast as you get it because you don't want to know. And I kind of relates to our skills in our bathrooms, right? They all give us a number, but we don't want to see what it has to say because it reveals some truths about us. And so those truths are that we do have time to sit at the feet of Jesus. Microsoft researcher Linda Stone said continuous partial attention is our new norm. And think about that for a moment. Like, this is the way we interact now. We give people our partial attention. If we're in a meeting, we'll still check our phone. If we're in church, we'll still check our phone. And that's what we do now. Continuous partial attention. This is our new normal. And we've unfortunately carried that into our spiritual practices as well. And that's what God tends to get from us, partial attention. So what do we give our attention to? Is it to what matters most, or are we in a constant state of distraction? I think the challenge now, as I talk through these things, I think the challenge for a lot of us is we are distracted about our distractions, by our distractions. It is difficult for us to even recognize our distractions because all of us are distracted. They are distracting us, and so we have to have an intentionality and eliminate our distractions so that we can give our heart to what matters most. Secondly, prioritize connections. Or maybe I would say schedule connections. Our tendency when we're planning our day is to schedule our responsibilities and then try to fit in our relationships. Whether that's with others or with Jesus, we try to kind of fit those things as we can. But the problem is that complexity is always telling us to add one more thing, and it doesn't make much difference. There's always room for one more thing. And when I was younger, I spotted my brother. He was bench pressing, and I don't remember the exact amount he was bench pressing, but we just put one 2-pound plate on each side, and that 2 pounds more, he couldn't do 2 pounds more. And that's how it works. It adds to all the other weight. Everything else feels heavier. And this is what complexity has done to us in our culture. We add things that don't seem significant. We think, well, I've got room for one more thing. And there's this cumulative effect to it. And so how do we make sure that when what we're scheduling matters most? Meaning that if you have an appointment with God, you keep that appointment. There's 24 hours in a day, so decide to take the first 24 minutes of every day and have a standing appointment with God. If you keep stacking and adding things, what happens typically is this type of thing gets bumped out. That's just the one thing there's not time for. There's too many tasks, too many preparations, and too much responsibility that needs to be taken care of. So often we bump our time with God. We need to ask ourselves, how many hours do I spend giving attention and effort to things that are neither important nor are they urgent? And I think most of us will be pretty convicted about the fact that we got some space, we got some time to sit at the feet of Jesus. And that takes practice. Like anything else, it's practicing the presence of Jesus, where you spend a few minutes, and then a few more minutes, and a few more. But it's doing what is most important. Make a commitment. Make it a priority. If you're going to have these times to just sit in the presence of Jesus. Connection always ends up feeling like something we can catch up on. But it doesn't seem to happen unless we are intentional to prioritize it and schedule. And that is especially true when it comes to our time with Jesus. In the spring of 2021, there was a video that went viral of a high school student giving this valedictorian speech. His name was Kyle Martin. He talked about the moment he realized he was in the running for valedictorian. He decided he was going to be all in. Like he was going to give every ounce of effort required in order to win this. Well, he did. And he was giving his speech, and you think, he's going to get to that place in the speech where he says, and it was all worth it. And it all paid off. That's not what happens. Instead, here's what he says in the speech. He said, it was so good for 15 seconds. 15 seconds of my heart racing, my adrenaline pumping. 15 seconds that, yeah, I won. 15 seconds of being on the top of the pile. He said it felt euphoric. But there must be a 16th second. And on that 16th second, I sat down on my seat and I looked at my silver stole that said valedictorian, and I thought, that's it. And he said, what just happened? Why am I not feeling anything else? And he said, I was shocked. And it was a huge problem for me, and I needed to figure out why. So what he described, I think, is pretty consistent with what a lot of people in our culture have experienced, or are experiencing, or maybe one day will. Pushing and going and accomplishing, succeeding, trying to impress everybody with the house that you have or the things that you have. And then there's a 16th second. And you're like, wait, does any of this really matter? Is it that any of that even last? He says on the 16th second, he started to realize that this great accomplishment was paid for by sacrificing connections with people in his life. And here's how he said it. Working hard is good, he said, is in fact biblical. And it is, but it should not be done for the sole purpose of a goal at the expense of relationships with others. Looking back on this year, I realized that the stress of this year for this goal in a 5-minute speech was paid for with a lack of attending relationships in my life. And nothing is more important than your healthy relationships. Not your goals, not your success in life or on this earth. There's no greater good that you can do for a person than have some kind of relationship with him that allows you to point them towards Jesus, and he should be your first relationship that never gets neglected. And so my hope would be that this would be a 16th second for some of you, where you stop for a moment and you ask some questions about your life, about what you're doing, and who you've neglected. The one thing that matters most, more than anything, is being in the presence of Jesus. Jesus said, she has chosen what matters most, and it won't be taken from her. In the verb tense, it won't be taken. Literally, it will never be taken, meaning it will last forever. It's the one thing that you can do with your time here on earth that will last forever. So Jesus doesn't want you doing things for him. He doesn't want you doing things for him at the expense of being with him. Or let me just get it very simple. Jesus doesn't want more and more from you. He wants more and more of you. And I hope you see the difference. And I can't help but wonder how the story ends. We're not told so here in Scripture. Jesus says to Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, and Mary has chosen what is better. I guess there's part of me that thinks that Martha probably went back to the kitchen, shaking her head, disappointed. But I would love to think that Martha paused, took off her apron, and she found a spot to stay next to her sister, listening to Jesus, spending time with him. She made some changes, and that takes humility. But you won't regret it. You won't regret sitting at the feet of Jesus. Being with him is the one thing that lasts forever. Amen.